Welcome back to another 2024 presidential election prediction. This is going to be what three states does Donald Trump need to focus the most on to win this election? So, as we know, the last election didn't go well for him, but that's for mitigating circumstances. Today, we're going to be discussing which are the ones that you ought to really lock in on. And so, there's about six competitive states, and then there's like three that are the most important, and we're going to get right into the meat of this. So, to begin, we can color in the ones that realistically speaking, if you're Donald Trump, who's going to be spending only less than half of what Joe Biden's going to be spending in this most recent 2024 election, then you ought to be focusing on these states that you need to cut the waste from. And we're going to start with Minnesota. Minnesota is going to go blue. The reason why is that it's gone blue for the past 12 elections in a row, which is hard to believe. So it's been since like 1972, maybe, where we've had basically this hegemony of Democratic rule. However close it's been in previous elections, we've had this white whale, so to speak, in 2016, where Trump got pretty close, but that has not been followed up. And that's even with Trump getting endorsements from these obscure white rural areas around the peninsula you see on the upper right of the state. And so it's a very depressing thing to watch. So like I said, I compare them to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it's a lot of very mid as hell. You know, they're 8-9. It's close to a positive win record, but they're not there. So it gets close to being Republican, and then it just isn't there. Similar logic also precedes places like Colorado or New Mexico, where you could see Trump increasing with Hispanic vote share and basically being able to convince Pablo and Pedro to vote somewhat Republican this time. It's still not going to cut it for the white suburban college educated folks that smoke a lot of pot. These sort of like wine cooler Republicans, Democrats, are not going to vote GOP this upcoming election. So getting that out the way, we have the next state, which is Virginia. Now, Virginia is difficult to say because you have Glenn Youngkin, who's like the 6'5" vest wearing, well put together white guy. But the problem is that Trump isn't that archetype either. And so while Republicans in the recent past, by the way, like as of like 3 years ago, won elections in Virginia, the truth is that we're not going to really see that in 2024. So Trump should spend absolutely zero money on Virginia. In fact, in 2020, he divested a lot from Virginia, whereas in 2016, he spent a decent amount there, millions even, because Mitt Romney had it competitive in 2012 and it was competitive in 2008, so to speak. And so you can see how the math electorally is shifting over times as demographics change, and the appeals of the different candidates from both parties seem to also be changing as well. We also have some third party considerations. The Green Party's coming in certain states, taking votes away from Joe Biden. Also, we've got people like JFK Jr. or RFK Jr., who's also going to take votes from either side. So for that reason and more, we're going to make Virginia blue again. Going forward, we have another state we need to talk about. So as we all know, Ohio's been competitive most of the last 30 years straight. And what I'm talking about is that it was competitive for Bush, it was competitive for Romney, etc. So you would think, okay, well, Ohio, we should spend money on a swing state. No. First of all, it's losing electoral votes according to the new Supreme Court census update to the Electoral College. And secondly, Trump has increased his margin in 2020 as compared to 2016, which is an election he lost. So if that's the case, then why would he spend a single dollar in Ohio? And plus, if he's going to lose Ohio at all, then he's going to lose the rest of the competitive states. So it's just a given. If you're not going to do this, you're not going to make it, okay? There's no way that you cannot do the SAT and then get into Harvard, okay? So let's just divest from the SAT studying if you're planning to go on to Harvard, assuming that's a requirement. Anyway, so when we're talking about New Hampshire, this is also something new. New Hampshire is a state basically that is super disadvantageous to the Republican Party. You've seen this recently. In 2020, in 2016, again, similar to Minnesota, it was somewhat close. But realistically speaking, all the rallies and the millions of dollars that Donald Trump spent in 2020 for the state of New Hampshire to go red went to waste. Also, keep in mind that no Republican politician could possibly help Donald Trump win the election in New Hampshire, aside from maybe Chris Sununu, who has been an antagonist this entire primary cycle. And so you can't really rely on him to endorse Trump very solidly. So we're just going to go ahead and just make that blue and save Trump tens of millions of dollars on a state that doesn't really matter electorally. When you actually do all the calculations, it doesn't really bear anything, just like Nevada. Speaking of which, we're going to skip Nevada and go to North Carolina. North Carolina is a state that, honestly, Trump has got to win, and he probably will win by like 5 to 6 percentage points. Even Romney won this to his big loss to Obama in 2012. When we're really looking at the facts here, though, what you'll notice immediately is that when we have people like Mark Robinson, Not Lamb, Scott Walker, I think is his name. We have a competent Republican Party going on. The RNC chair that is about to be promoted over Ronna McDaniel is from North Carolina. So the pedigree of the people there are pretty solid. And so if Trump is going to lose North Carolina, he will lose the entire election, folks. So if that's the case, like if you can't grow hair like in the rim, you won't be able to grow it here, is what I'm saying. So like if you cannot win in Ohio, if you cannot win in North Carolina, you're not going to make it elsewhere. So do not spend money on these states. Again, the three that are important are coming up closely. We have 6 left to discuss. We have the at-large of Maine, which we're going to put Republican. It doesn't matter at all. Anyway, when it comes to the next closest states, I'll proceed as going. Sorry, I'm going to mention Nevada. Nevada doesn't really matter that much either. I think it's going for Trump, by the way. If you've seen the last several predictions, you'll notice that I believe this. I look at myself in the mirror. I see how brown I am. I know exactly how my people are going to vote, and it's going to be a little, if not substantively more Republican than before in 2016 or 20 or 2012, and you can go back a couple decades. The point being is that the Republican vote share among Hispanics is exploding, which is fantastic given how many of them are coming in. You got to expect some of them to, budge and vote Republican, which is great. So my cousins are coming out in droves. But anyway, Nevada is one of these states to where, like, mathematically, it doesn't play much of a factor. Like, if you were to, add all the swing states, Nevada, those 6 votes are not going to make a difference. We're talking about 10 being the minimum to make a difference at the final electoral vote count. So, for example, let's say we made all these other states blue. Okay, does Nevada matter at all? It really doesn't. So, I mean, it's only 6. That's why I'm saying it's not one of the most important 3 states. Okay, so anyway, getting back to business, we have a couple more states to talk about. So, of the next important ones, all right, so to further explicate myself, I will announce to you guys that I think I can deduce what are the 3 most important states right now. So, first of all, let's talk about the state of Arizona. So, the state of Arizona, out of these remaining 5 states, has the second least amount of electoral votes. But more even than that, I would say it's still beneath Wisconsin in regards to historical trends, and I'll tell you why exactly. All right. So basically, when you look at Wisconsin, you'll notice that it was a tipping point state in 2000, 2004, 2016, and 20. So it was close in all 4 of those elections. Okay. That's like over half of the elections of the century, by the way. So when we're taking that into account, just like if you were doing gambling, you would actually say that Wisconsin is one of the most important states possibly for this electoral prospect of Trump or in Biden in that other case. So basically, with that being said, considering how close it was, it would seem to be one of those important states for one. Well, also, two, let's also consider that it's leading Trump in the polls to begin with. Now, the second state I think is super important is going to be Pennsylvania, which is also probably going Republican. The reason why I say it's going Republican is because of how close it was in 2020. And that's given that Donald Trump lost that election. And by the way, the blue collar voters are going to come home for the MAGA base pretty soon, given the fact that there's been fracking haltages in regards, and by the way, of federal leases being given out by the Biden administration, increases in gas prices, stuff like this that really does not behoove the people working hard around Pittsburgh and other dreary, hilly places such as those. And so, with that being said, I think that Pennsylvania is super close in a lot of elections, whether that be 2004, 2000, 2016, or 20. Given how close it is and how many electoral votes it has, it's definitely one of those 3 most important states. It has almost double what Wisconsin has, bigger than Arizona, bigger than Nevada, bigger than Michigan, bigger than Georgia. That being said, I think that's the first or second most important state for Trump to carry for this 2024 election. The next state I wanted to talk about is going to be Georgia, is actually the third most important. And I'll tell you why. So basically, the reason why I think, even though I think Trump wins Michigan and Arizona, I think Georgia is the biggest one, is because Georgia in particular has the most electoral votes out of those 3. That's the bottom line. 2, I think that Michigan is more disadvantageous to Trump, even though you see the trends favoring the Democrats more so in Georgia. You also know that a lot of it was circumstantial to the time and place that these elections happened where they trended blue. And so, with that being said, when we look at 2022, we see that the Republicans under Kemp did pretty well. And when you look at Herschel Walker, oh, he lost. But by the way, Herschel Walker was a pretty bad candidate, had a lot of scandals, was a hypocrite on many fronts, had a gay son, a lot of things that would fly in front of the face of a Republican voter and said, like, what the hell is up with this guy? And I mean, the guy was an idiot too. I mean, not book smart by any means. Could he, maybe read the hole in a defense to run through like 30 years ago? Yeah, probably. But I mean, aside from that, Herschel Walker fell the hell off. And with that being said, that's probably why that's more of a misnomer if you were to think that, oh, Georgia's so Democrat. And so I think that Trump will win Georgia, by the way. And I think it's the most important out of Michigan and Arizona. And so my three most important states for Trump to carry in this election and to invest the most amount of money on is going to be the state of Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The priority of the order of which you should spend the money on and rally in is going to be Pennsylvania first, Georgia second, and Wisconsin third, according to their electoral vote share. And I think this is going to be the electoral result, give or take a couple votes in 2024, given that Trump is winning the popular vote by at least 1 or 2% at this point, which is more than enough for him to win. And so with that being said, it's the 2016 result plus Nevada. So I'll see y'all in the next video. Adios.